everyone, happy Monday. Has DeepSeek become deep stink? You're watching Techstrong Gang. Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel for Techstrong Gang, and we're back. It's a Monday. Happy Monday to you. You know, we were last week out in Silicon Valley with a special edition of Techstrong Gang at Tech Field Day. We experiment with these things, right? And Steve Foskett and John Willis and Mitch Ashley and the gang out there, covered the Tech Field Day event. But there's been so much going on in the world besides that we wanted to, glad to be back here to talk about it. But, focus still remains on DeepSeek and the pros and cons and what does it mean for our tech world. We're going to get to that and some more good stuff on AI and more. But first, let me introduce you to our gang on this fine Monday. First of all, I'm really glad I haven't seen her on the gang with me in a couple weeks at least. She is our voice in DC, and there aren't a lot of voices left in DC. Our own Traci Bannon. Hey, Trace, how are you?
I'm just excited to get to talk to y'all today.
It's
This is going to be fun.
See you. Thanks and welcome. So we go from Trace to Tracy. I guess she's our voice in New Mexico, but she's also our voice at the Linux Foundation and on open source and microservices and so much more. She's CEO of Deploy Hub, Tracy Ragan. Hey, Tracy, it's good to see you.
Thank you, Alan. Great to be here.
Thanks. Great to have you. And getting out of his sickbed to join us today, because that's the kind of dedication this guy has. He's Futurum analyst, VI, CTO, co-founder, our friend Guy Currier. Hey, Guy, how are you?
I'm much better, thanks. It was a rough week last week. I did manage to stay engaged. I heard there was a little bit of news in the AI world, so I just checked in real quick. Didn't seem like a big deal at the time, but
there you go. Well, the good news is by the time he got better, it wasn't such a big deal anymore. Or maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Anyway, and then of course, running the anchor lap for us, he's our own 4x100 guy out of Cardinal Spellman High School in the Bronx, Mike Vizard. Hey, Mike, how are you?
Good to see you. I'm hiding out in my fallout shelter in New York because you don't know what the heck's going to happen with China and this AI stuff. So
no windows in that room, right? It's all good. It's all good. So, gang, let's jump right into it. DeepSeek, has it become deep stink? Every day, this thing is peeling away like a rotten garlic clove or something, stinking. The latest, Mike. Why don't you give us the latest, Mike?
Yeah. So things are kind of crazy. On the one hand, we have reports saying that sensitive data is being exposed inside of DeepSeek because there aren't any guardrails to speak of. And folks are kind of downloading this thing like crazy and all kinds of havoc could ensue. Some countries, Ireland, Italy, and the US Navy also are banning usage of this stuff. But at the same time, much to my personal amazement, at least, AWS, Microsoft, Google, and now NVIDIA all seem to be embracing this model and making it available to customers. And you got to ask yourself, did we not pay any attention to this TikTok conversation, or what's going on here, Alan, from your perspective?
Well, from my perspective, wasn't it Karl Marx who said, or maybe it was Engels, but I think it was Marx, who said that we could sell the capitalists the rope with which they will hang themselves. This is a great example, right? I think whether you think the DeepSeek relearning techniques, breakthroughs in doing it cheaper, faster, I don't want to say better necessarily, but certainly cheaper, faster, are real or not. What's for sure that we've seen is They may be able to build an AI engine. They don't know how to secure data so good. And it may be because in China, people who try to break into stuff get a quick 22 to the back of the head and you don't do it again after that. That being said, look, the Wiz research has exposed this hole where supposedly 100,000 people's confidential information was exposed open on the internet. They I don't believe they were the victims of a cyber attack that took them down. I think they were the victims of too many people hitting inadequate infrastructure and service to handle that kind of traffic. I think, it's not ready for prime time. It was an open source experiment by a couple of PhDs backed by a hedge fund, who, whether they shorted NVIDIA or not, we could discuss another time.
That's a whole nother conversation.
Yes, it is. But that's what I think is here. You're dealing with, they don't have the infrastructure, processes, policies, cyber in place.
There's so much to unpack with this. Something that, just to make sure everybody understands kind of the difference here, when it's popping up on Azure, when it's popping up on AWS, when it's popping up on Perplexity, it's not pointed at the DeepSeek subscription, right?
It's
So
not
there's the
pointed to
deep,
the Chinese infrastructure.
right? It's not very, but that's what when everybody started to download this app and it suddenly shot higher than Chat GPT with its opening, it was pointing there, right? So there's a SaaS option that it's that SaaS, right? Software as a service, the subscription that has suffered from that exposure, right? So that I just want to clarify. Yeah, there's a problem because they were not capable, were not yet mature, didn't have those things in place to be able to surface something, provide that kind of service. The other thing, though, is, well, they did something unique, right? And I would say, nearly almost, they're just shy of the United States in terms of their research publishing. Like right now, China's a powerhouse
Well,
when
they've
it
been
comes
putting
to
more
what they're
money
doing.
into labs and basic research for
Mhm.
20 years.
They have. And in this case, they didn't have access to, right? Because they didn't have access to all the same things that we have here. They came up with an ingenious way, right, to look at how they could pair different chip types together to get some interesting performance. But it's not, I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing, unless there is some kind of umbilical where every time you instantiate the model that somehow is calling home. But we've got folks like the University of Florida. They have a massive new super pod. NVIDIA has invested something like $70 million. Every student has to take 2 AI courses before they graduate. Everybody. You can't graduate without AI courses. Doesn't matter if you're nursing, doesn't matter if you're business. But I say that because they are decomposing this model to truly understand, right? They are looking at how the weightings are going. They're looking at all the different layers and they're seeing some different things. So there's goodness there. Putting it out there for Alan to install in his environment, in his AWS environment, okay, it's up to Alan, right? But he doesn't necessarily know what all the risks are yet, but it is a new model. There is some sexiness to taking a look at it, but they're two very different things. I do want to ask your opinion, Alan. Don't you think it's kind of interesting that it popped up when it did in terms of the US change in administration? Like, couldn't they have released it 3 weeks earlier or 5 weeks later?
I don't think they bought all their shorts in time.
Well, wasn't it also announced, was it 2 days after the giant government-funded OpenAI blah, blah,
Right,
blah
it came out
initiative or
right
whatever that
after,
was?
right, Project
Yeah.
Sure did.
Stargate.
Sure took the wind out of the sails of that one,
It did.
at least
It took
temporarily.
them the wind out of a lot of different sales. A lot of it,
Yeah,
right?
well, yeah, $1 trillion,
Let me
market
Trish, you
cap.
hit on something here. Let me tie it up so for people to understand. What you're saying is, look, instead of relying on the Chinese infrastructure, a lot of these places that we're seeing carrying it, if you will, are offering it as a self-hosted option.
Correct.
Now, my understanding with Amazon is, just for AWS I'm talking about right now, you can run it self-hosted in AWS, or you can plug in the Chinese one into not Broadcom. What do they call their Bedrock? You can plug in the Chinese version into Bedrock if you want, or you could run your self-hosted version. And I think the same goes for a lot of the cloud providers. That being said, I used to sell security software to the federal
You sure
government
did. You sure
for
did.
a long time. And this was in the 2004, 5, 6. And even back then, there was a strong prejudice in the federal government about buying checkpoint firewalls and checkpoint hardware, because the rumor was the Mossad had a back door that would allow them to log into these machines remotely or what have you, would allow them to get home, phone home, whatever you want to say. And that was enough. Checkpoint, it was a lot easier to sell Cisco firewalls back then, or NetScreen, Juniper, or whatever. What makes you think that's not the case here?
Well, I actually am always erring on the side of the caution when it comes to national security, right? Obviously. So I don't advocate that somebody connect and say, I want to use the Bedrock version that connects to China. I also think about the ITAR, right? Our export controls that we have in place. So I'm not going to send any of my data over there. I'm just not. But if AWS allows me to instantiate it and I want to experiment with it and I want to bet my business or my farm on it, well, that's my business inside the context, right? Inside the confines of the Continental, right? So I'm not farming out my data externally.
But so
Well,
now
it's a
you've
choice
got
people make.
Unit 42 out of Beijing who rents a small office in San
Mm-hmm.
Francisco and has the back door key into every self-hosted version because it's built into the source code, but it's
Mhm.
open source. Of course, it's safe. And
I see what you did there.
yeah,
You made a joke.
and someone and Unit 42 logs into your instance out of San Francisco. No one realizes it.
Always going to be a race. There's always going to be ways to break into stuff. It's chaos, and the faster and the better we can respond to chaos, the better. But I'm going to point out here that every technology gets disrupted, right? We are all disrupted at some point. And I feel like this is a disruptive moment. If everything that they say and how they built this and the cost around it is true, then it's a massive disruption. And it goes to a bigger question that I keep asking myself: why are we still putting so much money into one company? If in fact we could have some PhD students create a better solution, why is OpenAI looking at getting a $40 billion investment? There is a limited amount of funding available, and maybe
I'll tell
China's
you
being
why.
more democratized when it comes to funding and research.
I've been in venture-backed companies most of my career, and here's the rule: if you're not in the top 3, get the hell out. Money
Well,
goes
this
to the
company
top
was not in the
3.
top 3. This company was not in the top
They're
3. It
not.
just showed up.
They come from sort of an alien culture, if you will, right? Though truth be told, they're backed by my joke about shorting Nvidia. They're backed by a hedge fund, right? The hedge fund took what was it, a $6 million flyer here. And, if they did short Nvidia, they made that back 100 times.
That could be true, but I'm still going to push that I believe that we are hurting ourselves in the United States and our research by believing in one or two people.
But that's the
It's
difference
either
between government funding and VC funding. When I'm a VC or a PE person and I've got investors to answer to, I'm not playing Johnny Appleseed and trying to go trees all over the country. I want to bet on the winner. And you look at like the Andreessen Horowitz model. The Mark Andreessen and Horowitz's model is they pick one player in a given market. They pick a market that they think is going to be big. They don't care if it's the best player. They're going to give that player enough money to bury everyone else and get way out ahead. And so they'll capture a substantial share of that market and their investment pays off. And they became the most successful VC in Silicon Valley on that premise. And that's
And
how
maybe it
VCs
doesn't
work.
work anymore.
Well, no,
Thing
maybe
is, so
maybe
kids, so
VCs, a lot of people say VCs are what's wrong with this whole thing.
That's what I'm
Tracy,
saying. We're not democratizing the funding to create the disruption
Well, it's
ourselves.
not
So we're going to get
democratized.
disrupted by
It's not
somebody
supposed to
else.
be
Hold
democratized.
on, hold on.
Go
Okay,
ahead, Tracy.
I want to come back to that. Guy, you've got
yeah,
something to say.
well, I feel like two topics are being mixed here.
Mhm.
So I wanted to ask a question of everybody. Because Alan, the scenario you described, we went from security to funding in VC and competition, all that sort of stuff, sort of seamlessly. And I think those are really different discussions. I want to get back to the security question. First of all, let me just point out that NVIDIA has a NIM for running a DeepSeek. So you can air gap a small system and run it.
Yep.
But put that aside. You described a scenario, Alan, of like, using Bedrock or one of these services and all that other sort of stuff, that it's not fully mature. I don't remember who said that. My question is, why run DeepSeek? Why? I think DeepSeek I shouldn't say proved, is demonstrating the possibility of training models. This has what is it, 250 billion parameters in R1 or R2, right? Large models without these giant investments in hardware. Great, okay, but I'm investigating DeepSeek. I've used it, but I don't know why I wouldn't use that instead of Perplexity or Copilot, or I use a smattering of them. So that's my question to everybody. Why use
Why do
DeepSeek
moths?
other
Why
than
are
to
moths
validate
attracted-
that it works?
Why are moths
Well said.
attracted to a flame?
Well, I want to. So there's so many pieces of this. So I want to answer from a security perspective. It's more than that. I jokingly said that umbilical, but Alan brought up that potentiality of getting into, tapping into it. We can't lose track of the sight that even our U.S. based models, there's poisoning of the models. It's a real thing, and we're working after how do we get rid of that. Well, do you really believe? Taking a step back, being yay, go USA. Do we really believe that China was looking after the types of things that we would want to make sure were secured from that model, from a poisoning perspective? So some of my concerns around it actually have to do with the training data, the actual data itself, which we
Don't
don't
worry, they
have
got that
access
from
to.
OpenAI.
Yeah, well, that's what they're
Yeah.
saying.
And I don't.
Yeah.
I haven't
We're going to
bought-
get to
I don't
that,
buy
Alan.
in.
We're going to
So
get to
I'm
that. What I'm trying to ask is, you're an enterprise, you're an organization, an NGO, like whatever
Novelty.
kind of organization you are.
It's novelty
Um,
right now.
Well,
Novelty.
yeah.
It's
I
like
mean,
type of novelty.
if you're in the tech or R&D, you might want to take a look at it, and you'll pretty
Mhm.
quickly find that it's a perfectly good model.
Yeah, it's fine.
However, whatever its provenance, and then you're
Mhm.
like, well, I don't, it's not preferable to me.
Well, but I want to tie that back to something that Tracy asked about, or Tracy mentioned, was about the fact that OpenAI is a proprietary model. Why are we putting all of our eggs in one basket? So some of the research I did over the last year was looking at hundreds and hundreds of peer-reviewed studies, and what blew my friggin' mind was how many of them are using a model that has sourced out of OpenAI. But why? Why is all the well, we believe that part of that is free accessibility, right? The free version, the things that people can get after for free. It wasn't the necessarily the Git coming from GitHub. It wasn't looking at Anthropic. It wasn't looking at the others. It was around their specific models. So there is a research domination that we have to think about on the US side of the house, right? On the US side of the house. The other thing that this should really shake up, and I kind of like it, the models that we say are so wonderful and it may help us, right? We've built massive industries around this. They're proprietary. I don't get to see inside OpenAI's model. This shakes things up a bit, right? Yes, we're in a capitalist society. Yes, we want to make money. It's just like big pharma. Why do they make a new drug? It's not because they just want to be altruistic and help humanity. It's because they're going to make money off it. OpenAI makes a lot of money off their models and on keeping them proprietary. This kind of shakes things up. Yes, there are open source models. There are. But this kind of takes something that has had in-kind results, open sourced in-kind results, to something that is hyper proprietary. So I think I like that shakeup, but to Guy's point, with a little bit of pragmatism, it's okay to be excited by the hype and such, but we have to be ready for what's going to come downstream. Alan, you named it.
And it's important that we just demystify some of these technologies. And when I read that story, I was like, okay, we're taking some of the mystery out of what OpenAI does, right? So, and I think the more we demystify it, the more we all believe we could go write it as well. And if some college students with $6 million did it, why not?
Yeah. So Mike's dying to ask a question, but I read the white paper. Most of the math is far, far over my head.
Mm-hmm.
But
For me, yes.
the thing is, they're saying they used a different training method. It's not feed forward. It's slightly recursive, etc. Like you got to read it. I don't want to get into those wonky details. That's of abiding interest to the AI industry and in terms of development.
Yep.
But
Does
as far
anybody-
as nobody's talking about that really. Go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
Does anybody find it the irony a little rich here that, if I understand this correctly, OpenAI is saying that they quote unquote distilled their AI models without permission, the very OpenAI models that were created using a lot of data without permission?
Well,
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
Well, do as I,
I think
say,
we all
not
saw
as
that
I do.
immediately.
Do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah.
Anyway, guys,
that was a-
we're
that was
we're over
critical.
20 minutes on this one. I'm going to need to end it off. I want to end it with this though. If you want to get a little more, it has certainly disrupted permanently or temporarily. It's made a big splash in the AI market. Our friends at Futurum have a little paper they put. I think it came out Friday. DeepSeek disrupts AI market. You can get it over. I think John Swartz probably covered it over on Techstrong.ai. You can check out the article and the link to the paper there. So go have at it if you'd like. But we're going to take a break here on Techstrong Gang. We got more AI to talk about, but let's talk about AI and testing. You're watching Techstrong Gang.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.
Hey everybody, we're back and we're talking about AI and testing because, well, last week we saw Perforce has a new tool that eliminates the need for building your own scripts. Harness is talking about putting an AI agent in front of their chaos engineering tool, and now AWS has extended its platform to include the ability to generate tests. So everybody's kind of going down the same path here. And one of the things I do like about this is I'm reminded of that a woman who said, when they were talking to her about AI and its ability to create art and do all these things, she says, I don't want AI to create art. I want AI to clean up the kitchen so I can go create art. Trace, is this roughly the equivalent of that? Are we going to use AI to create the test because nobody wants to clean up the applications anyway?
Well, gosh, there are two completely divergent topics that I'm not going to cover because the first one I'll talk about for just a second, and then we'll put a pin in it. If we are helping people to truly write decent software, they're starting out understanding requirements in the first place, right? Kind of the big R vision of those things. First place that you go is understanding how is it going to be tested. You don't go straight to code. So there's that whole thing that we need to talk about, and the impact of having a holistic testing mindset end to end, not just as a chevron that follows build, right? That's one of the problems with the whole modern DevSecOps little continuum. It says that we just test in this one place. So pin in that right over there. I love the concepts. I love what's happening with moving from, hey, we're going to gen code, to we're going to leverage this in a way that can help us to generate some assets, But there's also another really important part of this right there. When you're using generative AI, there are two big buckets of ways that you use it. I roll, you use it to generate things. Okay, I roll there. But the other thing is augmenting human reasoning. So it really serves this wonderful purpose. I like it better for testing because there was a report that came out, and I'll have to find the actual report and send you guys so we have that in the link and available to people. 47% of organizations have automated their testing. So that means 53% have not. That should make jaws drop. So things that we can do to improve it, hell yeah. Now remember that all tools, no AI augmented tool is immutable and is perfect. But this gets us a lot further along the path. One post that I'll say, or one nugget that I'll share is right now, if you're trying to use it to generate your code and also trying to use it to generate your tests, if you're actually generating tests from it, you want to be a little bit careful about that because you have no verification, right? You've got AI on both sides. And right now, today, 6 months, it'll be different, but today, that's a little bit tenuous. But there's so many awesome ways to set it loose to help the humans with the testing. It does a lot on its own. But again, at the end of the day, you're going to have the humans in the loop. So, Trace, I know that you spend a lot of time dealing with this, right? In every endeavor that you go down, there's testing involved, myriad types of testing.
And one of the problems are the scripts. So Perforce is going down the right road. I've advocated for getting rid of scripts in the build process for how long now? 30 years?
Mhm.
I've
Yeah,
been
at
talking
least.
about that. Because scripting is very static and it can adapt. And when you talk about 43% of the companies have implemented automated testing, it means that they've put a group of testers who have some development background who can write these test scripts. So, one time I was talking to an individual who really loved his build scripts, by the way, and I think they're going to really love their test scripts. And to Mike's description or Mike's analogy of being the artist, they believe their art is in the scripts. They really love their scripts. So we have a cultural problem as well. And I've watched that cultural problem for a very long time. And maybe now that AI is cool, I mean, Meister was a rules-based, it was a knowledge base that we generated all build scripts for Ant or whatever you needed to build a script for. But people would we want to, we're the shoemakers. We want to make perfect shoes and we love our scripts. So we'll see how developers embrace this kind of technology. Because I really feel like they will feel it takes something away from what they do. But it's the only way to go because there's so much more stuff to write than a test script. And in terms of this stuff that, testing generated code, I keep in touch with my niece who took her first job and she told me she could generate 6,000 lines of code a day, which I think is insane. But she said she couldn't really use it because she didn't have the time to debug and test it. And when it's generated, it's a lot harder. So if we have more AI doing that kind of work, it will make it easier to use these tools. So, yay for Perforce to talk about getting rid of scripts. Thank God. Thank God. Let's do more of that. And I'm happy after, this whole last year, I talked about where's AI and DevOps. We're finally starting to see something come up.
Well,
I also thought
They're
you'd be
going to
happy,
be-
Tracy, with Harness getting in the game here because I know
I love chaos engineering. I do. I think it's fascinating, and I think it should be applied to so many other things, including security. So yeah, I was, I'm glad that Harness is going down that road because most companies really struggle with setting up game days for doing chaos engineering, and this will help a lot. And it's an area that I think companies should really focus on. How do you stand up a system if something broke and bring it back to health in a few minutes, not an hour, not 2 hours, not a day, and not even 20 minutes, but instantly?
You bring up the idea of what's the developer impact. We're seeing some pretty interesting stuff. I think I've chatted a little bit with Mike about this before. Right now, we're in that point. I'm not going to say a transformation. I'm going to say a transition where developers are creators, right? We create things. Software engineers, we create things. Even test engineers, we create things. And we're going from being creators to being reviewers and editors. And here's where it gets just a little bit dicey with newer in career. If you've just learned the English language, I probably won't give you a formal journal publication to peer review. Not yet, because you need more practice with the human language. We're seeing that with earlier in career, don't care what their age are, just earlier in career folks, because they're not getting to decompose in the same way. So that's just something, whether it's test scripts or any other thing that's being generated where we don't get to practice that decomposition that we did before. So I think that's just an interesting nugget to throw out there and to keep involved in this conversation.
Yeah, it's like losing the ability to navigate through a command line.
Mm-hmm.
How many
Mm-hmm.
how many developers know how to do that?
Well, it's
I'm always
coming
shocked
back.
when I
It's
get
vogue
there.
now.
Well,
Oh gosh,
Yeah,
it's
maybe
true.
it
you
is.
know, what do art students do, right? It's kind of the, I mean, what's the core sensibility of software development? Is it, I mean, there's core sensibilities maybe. I know even from, back when all we had was CLIs. There's something, there's this user experience aspect to it. There's also this sort of functional, back end front end is what we sort of call it now. But I'm not sure the core sensibility is your passionate belief that Python is or G or whatever is the future. And yet that seems to be so much of the culture and the discussion is the tools, the tricks, the languages, and so forth. I think that when AI can start to do a lot of these things, then my answer to Mike's question is yes, it's doing the dishes, so that the editing, supervising, whatever of like how do you put together good piece of software, good app module, good service, whatever it is, with understanding how the whole stack works, you can pay more attention to that and less attention to the how. I guess I'm really
Well,
starting
but
to
that's
disagree with myself saying that, but yeah.
well, but so it gets into so we're going to be. It's not. I understand that we're saying that we're going to automate the tedious stuff away, but there's going to be a point where we're creating. I call them this digital platform. We're creating these digital platforms where anybody can walk up to it. I'm a sailor. I'm a nurse, and I can say these are the things that I need. I need some software that will do this.
500
And
500 million developers by
right.
2030.
So exactly. And we're not going to see development in the same way that we're seeing it now. We're going to see software engineering. We're going to be at the intersection of the data scientists are plugged in with the data engineers, or plugged in with the software engineers who are creating that middleware, right? So that the humans can generate the software that they need. We'll get into this software flywheel. But you guys brought up a whole bunch of different things here. I want to track back to something you said, Guy, about and Tracy had foot stomped this as well about getting rid of the test scripts and how great it is to get rid of the test scripts. Again, transition. I think we're going to see in highly regulated industries, whether it's government or we're going to see that lag a bit because of the auditability. So they're going to need those tools that aren't using scripts. They're going to need to see the auditability of that test. And so I think we have a little bit of a challenge on that front. Can be solved, but a little bit of a challenge. But I was was on the phone this morning with my buddy Pat Dubois, and we were talking about where things are going, talking about agents and agentics and what's going to happen in the future. And we talked about everything is going to track back to the spec. Now, we didn't talk about what the spec is because it could be dozens and dozens of different things. Our software developers, our software professionals are going to need to be heavily invested in that part of it. And that's also going to feed those tests, right? It's also going to feed Harness. It's going to feed the other tools that are being improved with this stuff. So it's just so much amazingness out there right now. But yeah, so much amazingness that's out there right now.
Here's kind of a take on it, though. I personally think that when we look at AI and good uses of AI, app testing is probably one of the best in the whole software supply chain, life cycle. There's no reason we shouldn't maximize their use to to do testing. I think it just lends itself. I think the same way a human could render a script, the AI will render a script too, and it'll be fine from a compliance point of view. But at this transitionary moment where we are right now, I am hesitant to let AI generate code and then let AI test that code,
I won't.
right? Without having some human in there at some point, especially if it's anything mission critical or really valuable.
That's a strong recommendation, Alan, that I make constantly over the last year. Do one or the other,
But can't
not
do
both.
both.
For
Right
now.
now.
For now.
Right.
Right. For now. Because we don't have that verification, right? We don't have the verification and
We
validation.
don't have the
Don't do both yet.
confidence is what we don't have, right?
Right,
And
right.
because
And
we
trust.
know it's not at that level yet,
Mhm.
right?
Well, can't that be in the pipeline? I mean, I don't. Isn't you can have both, but not without the human intervention. You don't want to just release, right? Even release it to QA. Honestly, like no developer involved. I mean,
So, oh, come on, Guy. What's the answer? It depends. Yes, it
it
depends.
depends.
It depends on
Thanks.
your industry. It depends on your context. It depends on your workforce. It depends on the maturity. It depends on how old the software is and the quality of the existing software, all these things. So, yes.
Mhm.
And right now, if somebody says, we're starting on our journey, where should we go? I actually say, your documentation, what's the quality?
That's
Do
a
you have enough
low-hanging
documentation?
fruit.
That's low-hanging fruit. And then let's go to
Yeah.
testing. And then we can go backwards from there, because when you focus on testing, especially if you're focusing on you humans being involved, and I'm not talking about this completely automated tools, which are awesome, right? The autonomous tools. But if you talk about helping humans to get better at using the tools themselves, have them focus on testing. It still is sexy, right? It's still is sexy, even to a developer, to say, hey, can you evaluate this code base? Can you tell me where I have testing flaws? Can you help me understand unit tests, end-to-end tests, right? As it sees the bigger, brighter context. Yeah, start with testing. Absolutely.
Tracy,
Well, you know, as
last
they
word.
say, the more things that change, the more things stay the same. Isn't that what they say?
Yeah,
We've
it's a
seen
French saying that my French wife says is stupid. So
All right.
So we've software has changed and changed and changed over time, but we still are writing software the same. To be quite honest, we are. We still code it. We still, manage it. We still test it. We still, go through all
For
of the
now.
same steps, and
For
those
now.
steps aren't going away. So while
yet.
it might be scary to think that a developer AI would generate code and then test code. The reality is that right today, developers still want control. I have faith that they will continue to want control. They're going to generate code just like we might generate a document, and they're going to go through and they're going to read it. They're going to learn it. They're going to understand what they just generated because they have to deliver it. This is what I'm hearing from the developers, the new developers that I'm talking to. So yeah, testing would be a good place. And things like scripting, the problem is with those test tools, the scripting can be a bit challenging. And not all testers are developers. And so that's why we have a gap in how much automation is being done. So, and I really don't, I hate to use the term AI to say we're generating scripts. You can generate scripts without it.
Oh, shoot. We've been generating stuff for 20 years. I was generating my Pojos
So it's
20
nice
years
to
ago.
put the two letters in front of it, but it doesn't mean that's what it's doing. So let's just realize that we still have to go through the same dev process no matter
For
what
now.
happens. And we
For
will always
now.
catch things.
All right.
So
All
for
right.
now,
We're
for now,
gonna-
the
we're gonna
SPLC
take a
is not
break here.
changing.
We're gonna
Wait. The Script
Wait.
Huggers Unite meeting will be next month.
in Boulder, Colorado. Okay, we're going to take a break right here. We're going to come back and let's talk about conflicts of interest. Is there such a thing anymore? You're watching Techstrong, gang.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
All right, folks, we're back with our final topic of the day. And I think there was so much noise in the world that nobody noticed, but Elon Musk is now partnered with Visa so you can conduct transactions across the X platform. And magically, Donald Trump came up with a similar idea for his social media platform. I'm not sure if those two are discussing these things as they go along, but it all came together in the same week. Guy, what could possibly go wrong with a platform that
Yeah.
allows you to conduct any type of transaction?
Well, where to begin? So there's so much context here. I don't even know what to pick first. Like, first of all, when Elon took over X, Twitter at the time, he almost immediately made it known that he wanted X to be the platform for everything, just like Mark wanted Facebook to be the platform for everything. And one of those things was payments. It's kind of a natural in some ways, you would think. Like, these are communications media and one-to-one and one-to-many and all that other sort
We're
of stuff.
talking about
So,
a guy who
oh,
made his first fortune in PayPal.
exactly. Yes.
Let's
another-
not
yes.
lose
So-
sight of that.
So this is an old idea. It's an old idea. And I think that the track of Twitter half blowing up and losing a lot of its, participation and all that sort of stuff for political reasons that I'm not going to get into here. It's sort of come full circle a little bit with Elon's rise to political power. And in a sense, he has the political muscle right now to help get the kind of deal he wants from a Visa or from anybody. Similarly to the president of the United States having the political muscle to find somebody to back, what is it, Truth.fi or something? Truth.fi, also a payment an investment platform. So what could possibly go wrong? I think similar. What's really funny. The other piece of context is we get the AI announcement followed by Elon saying it's never going to work. So you have sort of pairs of like parallel paths here from the president and from Elon Musk. I wonder what's next. That said, these two are really different animals. Really different. The partly because one is a sort of payment and communications. Like I said, it's a plausible extension to both Elon's background as well as to the kind of medium that X Twitter is. And Visa itself is also a certain kind of a communications network as well, verified and so forth. Who's going to use it? X users are going to use it. Who are X users at this point? A lot of them are Elon fan people. That's just kind of how it shook out. Blue Sky came in. There are other methods for communication and so forth, but are people going to migrate into X because of this? There's lots of ways to pay and be
There's
paid.
a nugget
Go
that
ahead,
came out
Tracy.
this morning, Guy, that you'll like. There's just an article that was posted. I just put it into the chat for us to be able to share with folks. That says Bezos is boosting his ads on X. So are there going to be followers? What other kinds of interesting things are going to happen? They lost people, but they've been starting to gain people back.
This is the eco-political environment we're in the United States right now.
yeah.
Yeah, this has nothing to
Right?
do with
So we
payment.
really haven't had a president of the United States before, even Trump's first term, who was actively and openly engaged in business.
Oh, bullshit.
Trump has been doing this sort of thing. Okay, you'll explain which other presidents have done this. But Trump, to me, Truth.fi is the same as going back to Trump Shuttle, Trump Towers, Trump branding, Trump vodka, Trump, like all these sort of things. A new line of business where people who are attracted to him and to his brand, no judgment, just saying attracted to him and his brand, they can do the same kinds of investing that they do elsewhere, only now they can do it within this culture and within this milieu, and Trump gets his take from it, as does his partner, Schwab, who is essentially using Truth Social as a channel partner, as Schwab uses, or TD Warehouse uses other channel partners to gain business. But Alan, I would love to hear your perspective as well. You and I and Mike, we are old New Yorkers. We've known Trump forever since he was the
Since he
son of
first started
a real estate
hustling dimes
developer.
and quarters before he moved up to $100 bills and stiffing
Yeah,
contractors.
sure.
But that being the case, I'm not even going to talk about it as a New Yorker. I want to come at this. I was a political science major, history major in college. Spent a lot of time looking at and learning about the American system and the Federalist Papers and the Founding Fathers, the separations and different levels of government. A bedrock belief in our government it was a good government principle. We weren't here to enrich the monarch and make his treasure room bigger.
Wait, can I get a clarification? When you said bullshit, you were saying what's happening is bullshit, or you're saying what I
No,
think
I'm
is
saying in
bullshit?
his
Which is-
first term, he did what no
It
president
wasn't
had probably
open in this way. That's the only
It
difference I'm
was.
making. It wasn't open
He-
in this way.
Everybody who came to Washington had to pay the Trump hotel tax. Did you forget? If you
No,
didn't
no,
stay at the
haven't
Trump
forgotten that
hotel,
at
you
all.
didn't
It's
get a
just
meeting. That's pretty
there was
damn
no
open.
pre-social or
But
Trump
I'm
brand.
not even going to argue that. Let me get back to this. A bedrock of our government is, number one, we're not here to enrich the monarch. There is no monarch. Number two, everybody is equal under the law. Everybody's equal. That means that we don't discriminate against anyone, but no one is above the law, and no one should have to wield the power of the office for their own private enrichment. That used to be in the America I grew up and loved. That was, even if sometimes it didn't necessarily work that way, at least on its surface, that was a given. When a president or anybody came into office, they had to set up a blind trust. They weren't allowed. You're not allowed, when the king of Saudi Arabia comes and gives you a gold-plated knife or dagger, you're not allowed to keep that gift. That belongs to the people of the United States of America. All of a sudden, in addition to everything else, and we could talk about everything else till the cows come home, we've decided it's okay to allow this, whatever it is, come into office and enrich himself at our expense. And make no mistake, it's at our expense. Now, you're right, Guy. You and I are never going to go on Truth Social and use Schwab-Fi or whatever the heck it's called. As a matter of fact, if I had any money at Schwab, I'd pull it out just because they did this. But what Trace just said about Bezos is a perfect example. Everybody wants to curry favor. And Elon Musk is in a position where he's going to decide what gets spent on this government. And AWS and Amazon and Blue Origin, or whatever his space thing is called, is all very near and dear to Jeff Bezos. So of course, he's going to suck up to Elon Musk. And of course, Schwab and his daughter or granddaughter, whoever the heck it is an assistant treasury secretary, surprise, is going to suck up to Donald Trump. As a
And
matter
we
of
have
fact, all
now-
of big tech has.
Now we can call them our first American oligarchs.
Right.
Maybe.
That's what
And the
this
question really,
is.
that's what this is. And the real question is, why are we not
Why
making a
aren't we
bigger
rioting
issue?
in the streets? Why aren't we
Hey,
out?
listen,
Why
back
isn't
in this-
Congress standing up and saying, no,
Because-
this is wrong? Because they're
because the
sucking on the
Republicans-
same teeth.
Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah, the Republicans have become okay with this. And he was
It's not
very
just
vocal in the early
Republicans,
part of
Tracy. The
December.
Democrats,
Well-
everyone should be up in arms
In
about
early
it.
December, Trump was interviewed, I think, on Meet the Press, and he said he could not divest. He could not divest his
yeah.
investments. He said he couldn't do it.
Trust.
Divest it. He couldn't divest it.
Well, because he
And he
sells
said he wouldn't
gold
even know how
watches
to
and-
divest it. No, I said there's no way he could divest
You don't
it. He
have
just
to
said no.
divest. You could put it in a blind trust.
I don't think he's going to even try to do that this time.
No,
And like you said,
this
it's
is the
very
man.
open. He
I'm
said he
still
would
waiting for him
not.
to release his
Tracy, he
tax
was lying.
returns.
He was lying. He can do it. There are ways to do
Of course he can. He was lying about the
So-
2025 project. He's lied about the,
so-
the D&I people who are in the, the TSA. He lies all the time, but watch what he does. What he does is he's not going to do it.
So mark me on this. All that crap that happens on the Silk Road and all those illicit transactions is moving over to these platforms, and people are going to start using these things to do all kinds of things that are illegal, and they're just going to be out in the open because nobody's going to be tracking who's selling what, where, and when on these things.
I think that's right. And I think, Alan, my response to what you're saying is that I agree with you 100% about the need for, at a minimum, the appearance of neutrality and objectivity, but also separation, like you say, good government separation. I believe in that completely. I think that, I know that the level of cynicism in general in the electorate of the United States is very high. And that the general response that I've gotten to making statements like that is, well, everybody's done it.
Yeah, I know.
Biden and
It's
his
called
family are worse.
whataboutism.
Obama are even worse. They're worse, not just because they do it more, but because they lie about it. And at least
Well,
we
then
have
Menendez
refreshing
shouldn't have gone to jail.
honesty and openness about it now. That's
I
it.
mean,
This is
Menendez
for
has
so one
got
of the-
11
You know
years
what?
for
So
doing
again,
it.
I'm a history major. Let me tell you something. In the 1880s, 1890s, after the Civil War, right? The robber barons, the
Gilded Age,
Vanderbilts,
yeah.
the Gilded Age. Well, it was a little before, it's the beginning of the Gilded Age, before it got really gilded. But there was a time, not just where people were making tons of money, but that government got really, it started with Andrew Johnson, who came in after Lincoln. Everything was for sale under Andrew Johnson. And it didn't get, Grant did a decent job, but he was a junk. And then it went progressively downhill from there. And until the first time it wasn't the first time because we've had third parties, but a third party president won the election. The
Talking about Teddy Roosevelt.
Party. Teddy
Yeah.
Roosevelt. You know what he ran on? Clean up government, good government, clean up government. Put in.
And you know who had that message before him was Democrat Grover Cleveland,
Yes.
the former New York governor.
He ran once, then was out.
So it was like a 30-year movement that culminated in Roosevelt's
with
presidency and the
Teddy
beginning of
Roosevelt
antitrust.
cleaned it up. Now, the best we can hope for as Americans is that the stench of this becomes so rotten and stinky that we wake up, come to our senses, and we get some sort of good government movement here that may start at a local level and work its way to the federal, where, you know what, I would like to see any member of Congress has to put their stocks in blind trust. Let's take the insider trading out of this. They cannot go, Trace, you know this being in the Beltway. You can't go work for a contractor for 3 years after you leave government. You can't be running commercial entities while you're serving this government. And you can't have quasi people like what Elon is right now have any kind of say in things and access to top secret and everything else while he has commercial business going on with the US government. And until we do that, this whole thing is a farce.
All right.
Sold.
I think we're going to have to close this out,
All
guys.
right.
But Teddy Roosevelt, speak softly and carry a big stick, right?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Good old Teddy Roosevelt, the hero of, was it San Juan Hill? In
Yes.
Cuba?
The Rough Riders.
The Rough
Cuba.
Riders.
Spanish-American War.
Don't get crazy.
I was not a history major, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express recently, so I know.
Mike loves the history, though. All right. We gave you a little history, a little of this, a little of that, but we're done here on Techstrong Gang for this wonderful Monday. We'll be back tomorrow with more gang members, more news, more discussion, and more fun. Until then, this is Alan Schimmel. We're out.